He's Normandie. He's motherfucking. He's something funny. He thinks he's awesome.
Hey everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking, and this is a game that I'm not reviewing right at this instant. This is Shadows over Normandy by Devil Pig Games. This Heroes over Normandy, Shadows over Normandy, that game system was the system that actually introduced Devil Pig Games to me, and now they've kind of been publishing things under this heading, and they, I guess I had a friend of mine describe them, and I agree with that as well. They're a serious but light war game. Now, does that make any sense? I don't know. It's a game that, it isn't, when you first see kind of maybe the art of, like, the people down here, and also the art in, Heroes of Normandy, and also, the Heroes of Normandy, the card game, which I'm going to be showing you here in just a little bit, some of the art, like, kind of looks, a little bit cartoony. Like, I mean, like, you look at this, like, German officer there, and he's got that little evil grin on his face, or what have you. And I mean, it's weird that, like, yes, there is maybe a light touch as far as the presentation goes, but the games themselves are very, very serious, and maybe not the most hardcore as far as mechanisms go, but also but very true to the source material, which is, like, war and the battles that, and the historical battles that they're representing. So Heroes of Normandy, the card game, is basically this is Shadows over Normandy, but there's also Heroes over Normandy. This has got like Cthulhu feel to it, but it is taking these types of games and then they're like transposing them onto, like, basically cards instead of a bunch of counters and cardboard and what have you. And so it's maybe a different take on a theme that they've already shown they're able to make really, really well. So let me show you how the card game plays, and then we'll come back here and we'll talk a little further about why I have enjoyed playing it. All right, cool. Alright, so this is the game. I'm just going to kind of show you just the basic mechanisms of the game. I'm not going to go fully into the scenario that I have that was sent to me to be able to play this game as it is. Basically, suffice it to say, the American paratroopers have landed, and they are moving towards this village here in the middle that is currently controlled by the Germans. And so they need to basically drive them out. This isn't a game where there is a you need to kill all the enemies that you have in order to win the game. I mean, obviously that's probably going to help, but each scenario will have a focus, and one of the big focus for the Germans is to basically hold this village that's in the center, and obviously the big focus then for the Americans is they need to come in here and take over this area. Now, this is, as I said, a historical game. This isn't just like a battle just pulled out of nowhere. The company has made it a point to kind of look at different battles and different things that have happened and try to make up scenarios using the game to represent those scenarios. And people that play war games and things like that, they're going to recognize that is apparent. And admittedly, I mean, like, obviously, like, I kind of mentioned this, like, about the other games. Obviously, this is the card game version of their very popular line. But the Heroes of Normandy, I mean, admittedly, I mean, the artwork, I mean, I'm not going to say it's cartoony by any means. I mean, it isn't like super realistic, but it isn't like cartoons. I mean, I guess, it kind of reminds me a lot of, like, my old Sergeant Rock comics that I read a lot when I was younger. It kind of has that, obviously kind of fantasy, but steeped in reality type of theme going on. So, and I like that. I like the fact that it is made in such a way that isn't super serious, but it's also giving the theme a little gravity as well. But anyway, regardless. So you set up the game as per the scenario. So these are the different units that you start with. However, you have other cards that you're going to have in your hand that these are going to be able to put into your hand, and you're going to be able to deploy them to depending on which side. Like this side, the Germans can have reinforcements come from this side. The Americans have reinforcements that come from this side. And you are able to introduce more units, and also you get other cards like this card here that just has like a certain action or a certain event. So here it says receive 2 directive tokens and recover 2 hit points. Obviously, hit points, those are the health of each of your units. Directive tokens are these tokens that look like this. That basically, when you're able to spend them, you're able to change your luck a little bit. Now, obviously, this is a game that's going to be using dice. You're going to be using dice to make rolls that are going to either activate units or make attacks on other people, or also rolling dice to try to, like, prevent damage from occurring to you. Directive tokens are used to sway when bad luck comes your way. They're used to, like, help you out as far as that goes. And so you can add to your roll if you just miss by 1. You can activate a unit when you normally wouldn't get the activation roll, stuff like that. I'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. But there you go. I mean, that's each person's going to have the deck of cards. They're going to set this up as it is. Let me just grab a unit so you can kind of just see what it looks like, and I can kind of show you what's going on underneath it. So it'll describe the unit here. So this is, and I like this art. I think it's kind of cool that, like, you have, like, the kind of top-down version of it or whatever. I remember playing lots of games like this in my younger age, so I kind of like this throwback look to it a little bit. So it's like, it shows it's a paratroop unit, it's a mortar platoon, field artillery, and then, like, you can even kind of see the cool little jeep over here, and you see the guys, set up. So the big thing that you have here is that it kind of denotes what type of unit it is. So here it's like an artillery unit. It's a paratroop unit, and the reason for that is, like, certain actions and certain abilities that people enact. Like, it'll say this will automatically activate a paratroop unit, so you can kind of, like, see things like that. This over here is the activation number. If I choose I want to activate this particular unit, I'd have to take a D6, and I have to roll the die, and if I get a 3 or better, I could successfully activate that unit. And I think, a lot of people, when we first started playing this, I was playing with a buddy of mine who didn't play a lot of war games, and he said, why would I have to do that? And I was like, well, it is kind of realistic in war. I mean, as far as, like, it isn't just you have this omnipresent being over where it's like you're playing like playing an old Warcraft real-time strategy where you click and they go there. Representative, it's like, orders didn't always get delivered, successfully. And that's why, like, certain things like your headquarters that you have, and, like, each person has a headquarters, they automatically get to activate units that, so it's, that's one of their special powers, obviously because it's the headquarters. And so thematically it makes sense. But anyway, regardless, so there's that. Most things don't have range. So, like, here's this rifle company here. And so, like, I dig this picture. I mean, I like this top-down look. You can kind of see them bunkered down. They got the woods, the woods around here, and they got the little, like, the broken down building or whatever they're using for cover. But so, like, you can see here, this is also paratrooper, and you can kind of see that it is, like, instead of having artillery, it's a rifleman unit. But, like, so you can kind of see here, you see this where it says a 2 here, that means it has a long range. You can see the rifle company doesn't. Normally, you can only fight things that are next to you when you attack them. And so, it's one of those things where you have, range, if it's actually listed on this thing. So this one, because it's obviously a mortar, it has range. You'll notice also it has these 2 little stars here. That means it can make 2 attacks when you activate it to attack. And the 9 is you have to roll 9 or better on 2 dice to successfully hit. And that's, pretty straightforward as far as that goes as well. So if you attacked with this, like, you would then, like, if you're attacking, this unit here in the village here, you'd, like, one attack and you roll, and I got a 9. So, like, boom, that would work. And then what happens then, I'm kind of jumping ahead to the mechanisms here, but that's okay. We'll just show it here quick. So you're going to see here the Ostropen company, once again, really cool art. It activates lower, but you can see, like, its attack. It has 1 hit point. That right there is its hits. And normally, and see, this doesn't have any defense or anything like that, but because it's in this location here, and I can't really show that to you. Well, you can kind of see there's this house here, and a house here, and you see there's a 6+ there. That means that they can roll to avoid damage, and that's, like, no matter how much damage the attack does, because sometimes attacks do more damage, no matter how much damage, if you roll a 6 or better on 1 die, you can avoid that damage. Let's just see if we get lucky here. A 1. No, so we wouldn't. So most likely in that situation it would be destroyed. But one of the cool things is if you rolled a 5 like so, and the German player had one of their directive tokens left over, one of the things that it can do is it can give +1 to the little shield icon here. You can give +1 to the defense, and so then he could go, okay, that's a 6, and then it wouldn't take that damage in that situation. So I mean, that's something that happens. Now, one other thing really quickly, like if you roll the dice and let's say you roll doubles, like so, like let's say 2 3s, let's say. So you rolled 2 3s, you missed, but because you rolled doubles, you do get to put a suppressed token. And when you put a suppressed token on a unit, that basically bogs them down and they're less effective at that point. And so even if you fail, and you don't get a suppressed token if you actually successfully hit, if you roll double 6s or something like that, but if you do, so that's kind of an added bonus you get if you roll like a doubles on your dice. So just another little thing. So I kind of jumped ahead, so let's back up just a little bit here, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to actually look at this board. So when it's your turn, you're going to have, depending upon the scenario, in this particular scenario we get 3 command tokens here. Let me just take these out here. So you get, if I can get, I apologize. These are like the 3 actions, and depending upon the scenario, sometimes because of, you know, whatever, like certain sides are going to have, they're going to activate quicker. Like in this particular scenario, the Americans always have initiative. They always start because they're the attackers, you know, and so and the Germans react. And so, but you have these activation tokens, and what you're going to do is you're going to put them on these spots one by one. You can't save these in between turns. Basically, you use them up, and then the next round you get 3 back, and then you get to do one of these actions. So, and these are pretty straightforward here. So, like you can activate 1 unit, and that's, as I already said, you roll the die to see if you activate it. Then you can take 3 directive markers if you put it here, and those are just ones that you can use then at any time to make your chances of hitting better or defense better, or activating a unit that if you fail your roll, and you can only have 6 of those at any one time. You can't just stockpile them and have like 12 or something. And I also should mention too, when you use those directive markers, if you miss your roll by 2, you can't spend 2 of them and get 2 +1s. You only get to use 1 for a +1. So then here is how you actually get cards into your hand. So you can draw 3 cards and deploy 3 cards, and you don't have to deploy all 3, but you can have those 3 cards in your hand. You can kind of wait until you can have reinforcements that enter. And then when you activate a unit, that's also how you move your units as well. I should mention that normally, like anything that isn't mechanized can go orthogonally, up and down like so. Mechanized units can move diagonally, however, just to show that their mobility is better. And I can show you a mechanized unit here in just a little bit from one of the decks here, just quick. You can swap 2 adjacent units. So like if you wanted, like this mortar, like your opening round, you could move this mortar to here. You can move your rifle company to there, and then one of them can shoot, and then you could shoot with your mortar, and you use the mortar on there. Like that would probably be a very, very useful first move, as I showed you, and then I rolled to activate it and did the attack and what have you to do that. And then if you have suppression markers on any of your units, you can discard them by using them there. It's really straightforward. I mean, you just use one, you satisfy the action, you use one, satisfy the action, use one, satisfy the action, and then the other person goes. The only thing is that you can't, like, I'm going to activate a unit, you do like half of the activation, maybe you move, and then you don't do the attack, and then you say, okay, hold on, I'm also going to draw some cards, and you can't break it up. You have to complete the entire command when you place the marker down in order to do it. You can't, you have to, and before you move on to the next possible action. I said I was going to go through these cards, so here, and I should mention this as well. So here is like a Sherman platoon. Obviously it's tanks, and you can see that the tanks have like these 2 different attacks, and one's an 8, one's a 9. I'll kind of explain this a little bit here. So 2 hits, and you'll notice that there is this little armor here, where it shows, like, obviously it's first of all it's mechanized, so then it can move diagonally, but also this means that the attack on it, in order for it to even have a chance of affecting it, actually has to be a perforating shot. And a perforating shot will have that particular marker on it. So in other words, basically like a guy running up with a rifle and shooting a tank, presumably, is not going to have any real chance at being able to affect a tank. So you got to make sure that you have those, and you can kind of see like the two different attacks that the Shermans have. Obviously, this is the machine gun they have; it's non-perforating, but this would, and so then obviously tanks can get into it with each other and what have you. So that's those different units. Maybe I'll show you some of the cool other things from the German side here. They also obviously have their own tank units here. And so they like you can once again see it's an armored unit right there. No, I'm not a huge grognard, if you will. Yeah, I do play a few war games, but I'm not really into it, like my friend Marco is. But like this one, you can notice it doesn't have a perforating. So, like, I'm assuming, and once again, I'm not fully steeped in the knowledge, but this Butpanzer, maybe wasn't like didn't have a super big gun, but it was like mechanized, mechanized infantry type of unit where they would be useful against actual infantry, but not so much against a tank. But here you have your Panzer. Obviously, everybody's heard of those, and so you can see the Panzer. Obviously, a very nice tank, and it has like the perforating shot there, what's located there. So there you go. So the game is played, and depending upon the scenario will tell you. When that particular scenario is done with, if you satisfy a certain end condition, when the end condition comes, you actually are earning victory points. You're earning points for being successful at certain things, like if you're the German holding this village, or being the Americans taking over the village, and what have you. Then at the end of the game, whoever actually did the best job of doing that, doing whatever the scenario is dictating, will then be declared the winner of this particular scenario. Now, the coolest thing about this game, is I love like the kind of it's like it's a battle map, like you said. But I mean, I remember seeing like old photos and everything. Like when I read books as a kid, I was a really big World War II buff. As I said, my grandfather served in World War II, and he told me a lot of stories. And I remember looking at like all of these pictures that he had, and these books that he had of World War II, and it was always like these like kind of like they had these great overviews of these battlefields, of like all these different roads and all these places where like the tanks were and the men were and everything like that. And you see that in all the old movies as well. And so I kind of like, and I know that they're doing this. They want to evoke that feel, of like kind of looking down on the combat and watching it unfold. And I remember a long time ago on a podcast that I did with Joel and Marco, Marco actually remarked to me that he got so into war games that he would actually he could hear the rumble of the tanks. He could hear the explosions, as he was playing it. He got into it that deeply. And I remember laughing at him for that. But I'm almost like, I'm weirdly kind of ashamed. I shouldn't say ashamed of it, but I mean, he was right. We've played this multiple times. We've played different scenarios and played different things about this game, and we've really gotten into it. And it's made me actually kind of look up the different battles and things like that where these particular forces actually met and clashed, and it kind of adds a little more a little more to the story, and a little more, like as I said, gravity to the game that you're playing. And it's kind of, and I guess this may be like those first steps that somebody would take, where you kind of get why people enjoy war games and why they enjoy like the alternate reality of it, if you will. But let me talk about that and the game itself a little bit more with my final thoughts. As I said, my grandfather, my father's father, he was drafted and fought in World War II, and he fought in Italy and in Germany. And and as a kid, I would always like badger him with questions about World War II, because I don't know what it is, but I think especially little boys, at least in that age, when I growing up in the 70s, it was one of those things where it's like tanks were cool, right? And fighter jets were cool, and I found those things really interesting, and World War II just had really cool things. I mean, and what's really weird, if you think about it, it's like timeline wise, and this makes me feel old, obviously, but so like when I was in grade school, which would be like 77, 78, 79, right around that. So think about that. So World War II had only been over for like, little over 30 years, because it ended in 1945, right? And so if you think about that, then I mean it's like if we now that I'm like 44, it's like it's that my lifespan, my if I had been born like right at the end of World War II, it's like you kind of like see that like it wasn't really that far off. I mean, like 30 years when you're a kid seems like it's forever, right? But 30 years like now looking back and like now that I'm 44, it's kind of it's odd to think that like when I would like read about like like read my Sergeant Rock comics and GI Combat and Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos and what have you, when I would read those, and the fact that like we really weren't that far off. I mean, from this fairly devastating thing that happened, that encompassed the entire world, that it affected everything. So that, why I'm even talking about that is that I wanted to make sure that like even though like I said the game kind of takes a light touch, it still I think pays a great deal of respect to war and like a knowledge of war, and it actually encourages people to like look into it and think about it, and also like I said, I as I read through the scenarios and things like that, it's one of those things where I'd then research those things and like look into them and read stuff about them. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think understanding our history, even the horrific barbaric parts of our history, and and reading about it and understanding it, it can only help us with our knowledge. So like, in the future, it's things like that we glean from and like we think about and we try to like prevent, in the future. But I know that's a little heavy-handed for this game, but I was worried a little bit, like I said, with the art, and that it would, make it kind of cartoony, but it isn't. It is a very, very serious game, and ultimately a game, but still, it handles it well. Now that being said, and all that being said, okay, so now I can actually talk about the game. I think the game is a lot of fun. I mean, it just is. I mean, it is a very tactical game. It is a game that rewards strategy. It is a game that, like, I love the fact that we have like luck mitigation. I mean, with the directive tokens, with the fact that like just because you roll one bad roll or like you just you have options. You have the ability to get things done. And as the campaign, like your scenario develops, like being able to trying to decide what you're going to use those order tokens for, and like do you have units that are currently suppressed? Do you need to get them out of that? Do you have situations where you got to make sure that you get some more cards in your hand for reinforcements? Do you need more director tokens? Things like that, where you have to kind of weigh all those different options and find out a way to put yourself in the best possibility to grab that win and have that victory. Now, this is a game that I didn't really... Once again, I mean, winning's fun, but I mean, this was a game that I think the story and the theme of the game really mattered more to me than the actual winning of the game. I tried my hardest to win, and I won, a few times and lost a few times when I played with my friends. But each one of the games kind of just, like I said, it told a story. Like, and all respect to Marco, it was one of those things where I kind of could feel the battle develop. You could see as the units, like some units were driven back and some units were able to push forward. As units, were taken out and things like that. You kind of like could develop that that graphic feeling of kind of obviously I'd never know exactly what it's like, but you kind of have that like kind of almost movie cinematic feeling of the game being played. And that's something that as I watched it unfold in my mind and also on the board, I took a great deal of pleasure from, and it kind of transcended the actual winning or losing the game and just became more about the game and the experience than actual victory. And I think when that happens, I think that's ultimately where I enjoy games the most, and this game did that for me. So that is Heroes of Normandy, the card game. If you have any questions about it, please ask away. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. Thank you as always for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, I'm the Undead Viking, and I'm telling you to have yourself one heck of an awesome day. Alright, bye-bye.